call to order this regular meeting of the Operations Planning Committee for Monday, June 17th, 2024. It is 4:04 p.m. Let's get started with Jill.
Okay. I am thrilled to report that today is the first official day of HHR. So we have teams on site and they are at work. And I'll have much more to say next month, but we're just really, really excited to finally be at this point and grateful to everybody for the support along the way. In other big news, of course, we had lots of graduations. So congratulations to our class of 2024, but also to our 8th graders and our 5th graders for their stepping up to the next steps. And our fondest thank yous and best wishes to the retirees who left our district this year. In financial news, or also government news, we'll be at the RTM tonight. As you all know, we have 2 appropriations remaining. One is for about $180,000 to make us whole for the operational expenses that exceeded our budget this year. Major drivers for that were increases in both services delivered and the cost of services delivered in special education, close to $1 million, and then also shifts in turnover. Now that there are less teachers entering the workforce, it is more expensive to hire. So we used to be able to hire, when a teacher would retire, we often hired a less expensive teacher and usually would get some savings from that. But we saved $300,000 less this past fiscal year than we expected to. And we are expecting that to be a change for the foreseeable future. Anyway, that resulted in about $180,000, and we're be at the RTM for requesting an appropriation approval tonight. We're also requesting an approval for just over $1 million in security for exterior hardening and communications work. Otherwise, we have completed our budget adjustments. As you know, we received less. We received less than we asked for. We had asked for about a 6.48% budget increase and received about a 4.73 budgetary increase. We were able to make those changes to make material operational savings at a minimum impact to our students. We're very proud of our administration for much of what they found in terms of some of the efficiencies, ways of redistributing how we hire folks, looking at things as little as fingerprinting and being able to move the needle in that way. We will continue to work on delivering academic excellence, and the same excellence our families and students expected last year, the year before. We'll be delivering the same thing this coming year, and we're really proud of that. And that is the bulk of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. I just offer my praise for everybody taking that cut and applying it in such a way that it did not impact, at least in your judgment, the school experience for the coming year. That's pretty important to everybody, not just those students, but all of us in town. So thank you for that. Stephen.
Can I ask Jill a quick question?
Go.
Hey, Joe, whatever happened to the, lack of a better word, the pay-to-play concept for the teams?
We were able to make adjustments without putting that into place. So we are not using a pay-to-play or any sort of sports-based fee that is any different from what happens today. There are some students who pay a fee for their sports in some of the sports where we don't have facilities on site, but we haven't changed the model in any way at this time.
Okay, cool, thanks. Because people ask me when I'm sitting in the grandstands.
Sure, yes. So we were able to make the changes and find savings without shifting any of the costs to families.
Good job, congratulations.
Thank you.
With regards to my P&Z report, thank you, John, and others. We did have a public hearing on the cannabis resolution or cannabis zoning code change that we put forth. We had that last Tuesday on June 11th. It went very well. There was no one that spoke in, I'm going to say, in opposition of the code change that we're making, and the code change is to oppose cannabis. So it's really everyone that was there was in favor of Darien memorializing the opposition to never allowing cannabis such facilities in town. I think the highlight of that public hearing was There was a retired narcotics officer from the state of Connecticut that spoke. He is a Darien resident, and he was very eloquent in the way he spoke, and he was what that his speech was very well received by the commission. Um, the newspapers in advance called me when they found out about this hearing was going to happen, and they thought it was going to be quote a well attended and possibly controversial hearing, which if nobody spoke in and I'm really on either side of the issue, that doesn't really make it controversial. So once again, I would say that Darien is a leader in the area, putting forth things that are best for our residents. At that same meeting, we had another, I'm going to call it a cleanup item. A lot of people in town are converting from oil to gas on their electricity. Most gas tanks, if they're propane and they're not on natural gas on their street, have to put a gas tank on site. Some of those have started to pop up in front yards and side yards visible from the street. So we just made a regulation or had a public hearing about a regulation so you don't see these above grade gas tanks from the street and side yards or front yards. What else is important? The Thorndale Circle project, which is that's the office park that's on Thorndale Circle. It's owned by the Nielsen family, for lack of a better term, but most people know it. That consists of about it's 7 or 8 office buildings. One of the concepts that's out there now, they had a public hearing, was to convert 5 of those office buildings that are near vacant or could be made vacant in the short future to apartment buildings. That application is going through the process before it gets to P&Z, which means environmental commissions and architecture review and whatnot, before it gets to the P&Z commissions. That's moving forward. Way down on the post road near the Norwalk border, there was it's the old Bartucci's pizza restaurant that sold. It sold to a person that wants to open up a car wash, an super automated car wash. As part of their application, they want to put a traffic light at West Norwalk Road to facilitate the circulation and help with the traffic patterns in that area. My understanding is that the state never approved that traffic light installation there. So that kind of put the application on hold. That application is going to come back, I guess, in about 2 weeks with a redesign and new information. And they're going to seek approvals without having to install the traffic light. I've not seen the full documentation of the report yet, but that's something that's still out there. The other item I think is relatively important. We continue to monitor what's happening up in Hartford with regards to housing regulations across the state. There's this concept that's called fair share housing, where the state and some, third-party agency or third-party advocacy group says, what is your fair share of affordable housing you need to put in your town? That legislation's been bouncing around up in Hartford for probably at least 3 years. I mean, first thing I heard about it before COVID, and that's where my new benchmark is these days. I'm told that was formally taken off the table again for this year by those in power up in Hartford. You never know if it's going to come back again next year or the year after that when the legislative session happens. But supposedly right now that fair share thing is, basically dead on the water. There's a couple other properties that are on the market for sale in town. We always land up monitoring that. I'm in the real estate business too for commercial, and I keep my eye on stuff like that. There's nothing super earth shattering or should really change the dynamics that much in town. But that's something that we're also watch. And the last thing is the people up in Wilton, which is another one of our peer towns, and also New Canaan, which is another peer town. They're kind of getting, I want to say, bombarded by 830G applications. And I think everybody at this table kind of sort of knows what they are. We're not experiencing that in the current shape and form. I think it's because we have a good zoning department and planning department. And people, we've done a lot, on our own fair share aspect on ourselves where there's not much to do. We also lack vacant land where people can buy vacant land and build stuff too. So I think that's kind of sort of it. Any questions for me? I'm always here.
The update on the sale of Avalon.
I do have some information on the sale of Avalon. It's not really super public knowledge, but it is kind of public knowledge among a small community that the property is/was on the market for sale. The purchase price probably will be in excess of 120 million, $100 million. I am told that they have selected a buyer and the buyer is moving through the due diligence process at this time. Avalon is a company that the way they market it's a publicly traded REIT, and the way they market their company is that they have no real quote unquote assets that are over 15 years. This is one of their assets that's over 15 years old. So they have a cycle for repatriating money where they'll sell, an older asset that's in seasoned condition, and then repatriate that money for a new asset and build ground up. They have targeted Darien and a couple of other in southwestern Connecticut where we live for sale. And that's the most recent one. It shouldn't really affect much in the town of Darien. It's just one institutional owner probably going to sell it to another institutional owner.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Few items from me, starting to quiet down a little bit for summer, maybe after the RTM meeting tonight. I would just add to Jill's point, the RTM has a number of important appropriations tonight, so I certainly would urge them to pass the two school-related measures that Jill mentioned for security and for their operating deficit. We also have on the dock for tonight a resolution to address 3 easements that we need to have approved to finish up the repairs for the Hanson Road Bridge. So that's pretty important. Another one is an appropriation for $1,425,000. This pertains to retaining a consulting firm called Reed Hildebrand. And what they're going to do is they're going to develop the master plan for Great Island. This is a separate appropriation for this important work, but it's not just the plan, but the process they're going to go through to develop the plan, which is going to incorporate a lot of feedback from the public in I think a very smart way, is the way they describe how they're going to manage that process. So certainly more to come on that, but I would urge the RTM to approve that. Only other thing to mention on their list for tonight is an approval of, I guess, what I would call rescinding, if you will, or decreasing the original bond resolution for Great Island. As everyone will recall, the original purchase price for Great Island was, $103 million through the negotiation work led by Monica McNally and Jim Palin. They reduced that price down to $85 million. And we have spent above that in terms of not just an appropriation, but bonded funds in the, call it $6 million range. But that leaves about $11 million in appropriation that we could spend because it's appropriate, even though we haven't bonded for it. We on the Board of Selectmen and just others collectively feel that the best practice here is to hand that appropriation back to the RTM. We shouldn't have money appropriated that doesn't have a clear spending rationale attached to it. And so that's also on the agenda tonight to reduce the amount appropriated for Great Island down to just the amount that we bonded, which again is in the $91 million zip code. In addition to all that, just building on the cannabis point that Steve brought up, what he was talking about was a resolution in the town that would modify our planning and zoning regulations to not permit these types of businesses to be established in Darien. As everybody knows, there is a proposal to convert the Smoky Joe's and the boathouse that's over right there on the post road at the Stamford border, just inside Stamford, to convert that to a marijuana or a cannabis dispensary, which would have both medical marijuana as well as recreational. I've done a video on this, but there's a pretty vocal effort that's coming from not just Darien, but Stanford to convince the zoning board in Stanford to deny that application. And they've had 2 hearings on this matter. The last one was on May 20th. Lots of speakers, lots of involvement from both Stanford and Darien. A vote is forthcoming. They have not scheduled one as far as I know, but we remain on top of all this. I continue to believe that there are better locations for those kinds of businesses, not right on the Darien border. So more to come on that, but we are focused on it. I would just follow up on one thing Steve said about this fair share housing mandate that's been floating around in Hartford. Towns like ours get under a lot of pressure for things like affordable housing, but I think thanks to the efforts of folks like Steve, his predecessors on the planning and zoning like John Seedy, as well as our very talented planning and zoning staff. I think the town of Darien has done an excellent job in collaboration, in particular with our local builders, to get affordable housing spread into our new developments in a smart way. If you go up to these new complexes, it's hard to tell that there's affordable housing there, but it's integrated within those communities. And I think a way that works for Darien, and those builders in collaboration with our elected officials have done a great job doing that. And I would just applaud that, and just anything we can do to encourage that, because Darien supports affordable housing, but doing it in a way that works for Darien is terrific, and more the merrier. We don't need someone from Hartford imposing their view of how affordable housing should be done in this town. We should do it ourselves because we have a demonstrated track record that we do a good job. One last thing is Board of Selectmen tonight. We are meeting at 7 o'clock. 2 main things, well, several things on the list, the agenda tonight. But one in particular is the flag policy. We voted a flag policy in about 2 years ago that said that we would only be flying the U.S., state of Connecticut, and town of Darien flags. At the request of some members of the Board of Selectmen, we're going to be discussing that again tonight, so more to come. In addition, we're going to be finalizing updates to appointments for the Parks and Rec Commission. So we'll be voting on those tonight as well. So stay tuned for that. Only other thing is that I received note that the state of Connecticut and the governor have activated emergency protocols for the heat wave that's about to descend on us. Today was hot. Tomorrow and the next 3 or 4 days will be hotter and more humid. So I would just urge everyone to pay close attention to that. Protect yourselves if you're going to be outside for any length of time. Please pay attention to pets and our 4-legged friends. They are also susceptible to dangerous heat. And that if you are in trouble or have difficulty in some way dealing with the heat wave, please call the police department and they will help direct your call to someone who can provide assistance. So that is it for me. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Could I just add to the cannabis thing in Stanford a little bit, John?
Please.
There was supposed to be a vote on that application on Monday, June 10th. I think they had a quorum at the Stanford meeting, but not everybody was there. So the proposal to vote on that application has been delayed, was delayed for 2 weeks. It's going to be on Monday, June 24th.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Okay, we have one other housekeeping thing to do. We need to approve our minutes, which I believe we have a quorum since there are only technically 5 of us on here. So I've read through the minutes. We've got them for April 22nd and for May 20th. Did either of you have any comments or changes for the minutes for those 2 meetings? Okay, could I get a motion to approve both the April 22nd minutes from the OPC and the May 20th minutes? Jill moves, Steve seconds, all in favor? Okay, excellent. We've got our minutes approved, and unless anyone has anything else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Steve moves, Jill seconds, all in favor? We stand adjourned. Thank you, friends.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.